Okay, so we're going into part two of how I got into the New Age, which I never called it that. But in hindsight, that's what it was. So, after my first trip to Sedona, I was just super intrigued. And I don't even remember exactly what I started getting into. I think crystals were the first thing. It was like walking into my first crystal shop, I was just like in a maze. And I was excited and I thought, wow, look at all these wonderful things that can make me feel all of these different things, which um, I did feel those things, and I became very sensitive to those things, and eventually I'll talk about just how dangerous that can be, not because we shouldn't feel good or feel certain things or whatever, but just because of the nature of the way that kingdom works. Okay, so I did all of those things. I got my first oracle deck, which I actually had bought my first tarot card deck um, like 5 years previous. We saw when my family and I talked to a psychic, and I just thought it was interesting, and I picked up my first deck at Barnes and Noble. I was afraid of it. The first time I got a deck, I was afraid to use it. I should put that out there. There was this voice, this thing that was like, that's not safe, that's not cool, like don't do it. But I was, always kind of intrigued. So, I mean, that one actually sat in a box in my room for a long time. And I over the past year, my sister retrieved it, and she was like, "Oh, here, isn't this funny? Here's your first deck." And I was like, "Oh, cool." Still never used that one. It was like a traditional Rider Waite, I think. I don't even remember. Like I said, I got rid of everything. I can't even reference. So got my first tarot card deck like 5 or 6 years ago, and never touched it because I was scared of it. And then when I went to my first trip in Sedona, I got an Oracle deck, and I did use it, and I got really comfortable with it. And I had, I think, a total of 4 Oracle decks. One I had like just gotten like 2 months ago, so like really new, and I had one tarot card deck. Aside from the one that I had already. The one I was using, it was beautiful. I loved the images. I loved the messages. I thought that it was a really just good, positive thing. And a lot of people who followed me for a long time, I was using it in a way that felt really good and positive. That felt like I was doing a good thing. That felt like, I was just getting these messages, and I mean, like, that's the thing about all of this. Witches are real. Warlocks are real. Psychics are real. People have real power, but it's not from God. And I thought that it was. I thought in all reality that what I was doing was good, and it was a gift from God. And I just had like someone before this message me that was like, "Thank you for this message that you gave me a couple months ago. You have such a gift." And that hurts me so much now, because I'm like, I was so deceived. Everyone else was so deceived, because I thought that the things that were happening to me, I thought those were gifts from God. But I was not, unknowingly, I was not rooting for the right kingdom. And now, in hindsight, I know, and I'll explain that more. Which is scary. It's really scary. So anyways, first trip to Sedona was awesome that year. I got into crystals, got into cards, just not quite as actually, yeah, in there I did started getting into the cards. But we planned our second trip to Sedona. Magically, amazing how that happens. Magically, when we checked out of our hotel, they were like, "Hey, so if you listen to another sales pitch next year, we'll give you a free 4-day night stay anywhere of your choice." And Jordan and I looked at each other. We loved the hiking in Sedona. We were like, "Let's go back. This is our call. Let's go back. Let's go back there." So we booked another trip, and that was in May this year, so recent. And so I used my Oracle decks. I used those for a long time. There are these messages that I got a lot that sent me onto researching into aliens, and it was an Oracle deck that I had used, and the card I would get repeatedly was Pleiades, and Pleiades is a understood type of alien. There's so many channeled books. If you don't know what channeling is, it's when people use themselves as a channel to communicate with the spiritual realm, with guides, with spirits, which I won't get too radical right now because it's a lot to chew off, but what I understand in hindsight are demons. And I mean, a lot of people are probably like, no, no, no. Listen, I was too. This was my life. Like, this was everything. And it was a huge crutch for me. All of the new age stuff, like all of the power that I felt like I got, everything, all of the confidence that I got, all of the self-assurance that I got was real. It was real and it worked, but it was not from God. Okay. So anyways, I used these cards and I kept getting the Pleiades, and then I picked up a book that I actually read in Sedona that was just reaffirming. It just felt so reaffirming, and it felt real, and it felt good, and it was channeled. And it was talking about the Pleiades and how they're a family of light. I'm like, wow, this is right where I fit in. This is exactly what I feel like I am a part of. And it went into me looking into these influencers who also talked a lot about Pleiades, talked about starseeds, talked about healers, everything. And I am thankful now that that was the only book that I read on it, because otherwise it's so much information to try and debunk later on. Trying to, in hindsight, go back and think of all of the things that I had learned from channeled material, like law of attraction, manifesting, all of that. And trying to go back in and say, actually, this is, this is what's biblical. This is what's, this is how it's being twisted. So, anyways, I would do that. And then I kept getting this card for protection. And that's when I started getting scared. And that's when I started thinking, okay, I've been messing with this stuff and I've been doing this stuff. But never have I actually sat down and prayed and said, please God, make sure I am safe. Please God, whatever. My source, I wasn't making my source God. It was just, I was open to whatever. I was open to whatever wanted to come in, whatever wanted to influence me at that time. And that was a big mistake that I feel like I made, because although I, had the revelations, although I had, there just was so much. It just, in hindsight, I know that wasn't a gift. That was not from God. I don't even know where to even. Anyways, we went to our second trip. I'll talk about this really quick before to kind of end the second part here of like what really got me into what areas I know now I was deceived. But we talked to a psychic the second time we went in Sedona in May. And I had some really specific questions this time. I wasn't going to waste any time. I knew exactly what I wanted to know. I wanted to connect with my guides. I knew that I had these things trying to connect with me, and I wanted to connect with them. I wanted to know what they were saying, and I felt, I felt that they were good. And so I went, and the psychic that I wanted to talk to wasn't there. She was the one that I talked to a couple years, like last year. She wasn't there, so I talked to this new lady. This lady and I had matching necklaces. The necklace I had picked up like a day before I went to go. So I was like, oh wow, that's a sign. It's deception. I was like, wow, look at this sign. This is awesome. This is exciting. And she just kept talking about how my aura, like I was just so open. And she herself was like, you need to focus on protection, because when you are that open, you're letting a lot in that you don't even really realize. And, at the time, like that's also when I was really scared. But she told me, my guides, I said, what are my guides saying? Like, what do they want me to know? And she said, they want you to know that you need to finish the classes. I said, wow, how would she have known that I have been enrolled in Reiki classes, that I've been enrolled in crystal healing classes, all of these new age classes for months, like, and I was just sitting on it, like something just, I wasn't ready to do it for some reason. There was this thing just holding me back that I couldn't do it. And I was like, wow, they want me to take the classes. Satan wanted me to take the classes. And I was his willing, he was just my puppeteer this whole time, and I just didn't even realize it, because Reiki, a lot of people, if you understand how Reiki works, you're just using energy healing. When the thing is, when your source isn't God, it could be anything. There is God, there's the devil. There's God's kingdoms, there's Satan's kingdom, there's nothing in between. And so when God isn't your source, when you're not looking to him for your healing, when you're not looking to him for your goodness, then guess where it's coming from? And I didn't even realize it. So, you know, these guides that were there to help me, they really wanted me to finish that Reiki class, because that was another thing that I could open myself up to. That was another way that they could get into my life and use me for their purpose. And I guess I should end the video there. I don't know. There were just all of these different things that kept going in that just said, start the business, do this, do that. And it was all coming from channeled material. It was all coming from psychics. All of that information was coming from these outside sources, from these things that were not God. I was not seeking God. I was not seeking his direction for my life. I was seeking, you know, that self-serving thing. I was like, wow, what's next for me? You know, what's going to make me feel good? And that is how all of those things got in to whisper into my ear and say, oh, you're going to read cards for people. Oh, we're going to make you really good at doing this. Oh, you're going to be great at doing Reiki. Let's do this. Let's start a whole business. Let's use you to teach people how to manifest. Let's use you to do this. And it wasn't until after I had a conversation with my coworker that I really started to, I mean, like I said, the scales just fell away, and I could not unsee, I could not unhear the things that she had said and the scripture that she had used to back it all up. And it was just like my world came crashing down, and I couldn't, like, I felt so deceived and just scared out of my mind, because I had no idea like what was to come next because of what I had opened myself up to. So I'm gonna leave it there and kind of continue on here, I guess, into that conversation that I had that night, that one night. It took one night for me to drop everything, and I'll tell you why.